Welcome to the Vibrantly You podcast. We're your hosts, Megan Martineau.
And Caitlin Cipriano. In this podcast, we talk about fitness and nutrition on your motherhood journey. Whether you are trying to conceive, pregnant, postpartum, or beyond, you are welcome here.
Nothing is off limits, and our goal is to support you in this important season of life so that you can feel vibrantly you. As a reminder, this information is not medical advice. Please see the show notes for more details.
Welcome back to the Vibrantly You podcast. Today, Meg and I are going to be having a candid conversation about breastfeeding beyond a year. So this is sort of, I think, falls into sort of our coffee chat series here today, and really just looking to, share our experience here with our breastfeeding journeys in hopes that if you're going through any types of challenges or struggles, you can also feel seen and heard through the process.
Yeah, I think breastfeeding is such a foreign thing. Like, it's something that you really can't prepare for. I mean, we try to prepare for it ahead of time, right? But it's like until you experience it and go through it, it's hard to like fathom what it's going to be like. So I do feel like it's always helpful to hear other people's experiences and journeys, especially as we've talked about so much on this podcast with social media. It's so hard to like see other people sharing their highlight reels and being like, wow, this is like just so great and magical for everybody. And that's not my reality. What's wrong with me? So, yeah, we had some differing breastfeeding experiences, I think, between all four of our children. So I think it'll be really great for us to just talk through all of that and share like what those experiences were like.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think at first, when I'm thinking back to Luca, my first kiddo, I did feel like, okay, I need to prepare for this. I don't know. I just have such a like, I need to prepare for everything
Yeah.
kind of like personality. And so I was trying to figure, like, how do I learn more about this other than just like, okay, I'm gonna give it a go in the hospital kind of thing. And I
hmm
know some people are just like, things just happen and they would, wing it and learn on the go. And I think, well, there's a lot of that in motherhood. There are other opportunities to educate yourself so you know what are some things that you might expect happening. I felt really lucky that at the hospital that I had my son, they had like a dedicated lactation consultant, and you could meet with her beforehand. And so I did meet with her, and she was really helpful in going over basics. And, she had a couple sort of like those like knitted like models that you could show. And so that was really cool. And she was wonderful. And so I remember that being huge. And then I do think I took like some other type of online course as well. And um, again, just sort of knowing things that I might come across, I felt like was really helpful. And I did have a pretty like overall positive experience with Luca. I'm sure that there was like little things that happened and, learning through. But my biggest challenge with him was actually, I think he was around 5 months old. And because this was during COVID, prior to that, we were just really like home. And so I was just like exclusively nursing him, and we had no problems. But at that 5 month mark, I think I did have to start going back for some like in-person things. And he just like would refuse to take a
Yeah.
bottle. And so like he would for like a little bit, and then there came to be this point where he just like didn't want it. And so he like I remember um I was seeing clients in person at the gym at that time. And so I was like, gone for the day, for the day. And he just like called and he was like, he hasn't drinking anything like 4 or 5 hours, and was like, Derek was freaking out. Derek's my husband. And so at that point, I just started seeing everyone. I had to see everyone remotely for
Yeah.
visits, and it certainly did change sort of aspect of my career in ways. Hindsight 2020 for the best for sure, but that was probably like the biggest challenge was like him not being willing to take a bottle.
Yeah, that's such a real thing too. Like I've had friends that have had that same experience and like if you are a working mom, like that's a big problem, having a baby that's refusing a bottle because if you're back at work, like you said, and working in person, like you can't be there to feed them. And I feel like it's interesting because a lot of times lactation consultants are like, don't introduce the bottle too early. They're not going to go back to the breast, right? They kind of like hammer that message in, and you're like, okay,
Yes.
I don't want that to happen. But then it does get to some point, it seems like, where then the baby's like, I only want the boob, like, do
Yeah,
not give me a bottle. I will not drink it.
I know. So we definitely came across that, and yeah, it ended up being fine for us. But yeah, I can't imagine if I had been, in a more position where like I had to be at work. He was originally going to go to daycare and everything prior to COVID happening, and so that would have been inter interesting to navigate if that same type of situation had come up.
Yeah, and I really
So
don't know like what people do in that situation where you can't adjust.
yeah.
I feel like when that happened to one of my friends, like she was lucky enough where like her daycare was like really close to her work. And so it would literally be like she would dip out, go feed the baby, come back to
Oh
work,
my
like
gosh.
which is also crazy. But yeah, I'm like, how do
Yeah.
people do that? How do you do that? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we would have certainly had to, hire a lactation consultant to like come in and figure something out, I guess. Like, I don't know, but luckily I had a flexible enough situation that I figured it out and he exclusively just nursed until um 18 months, and I think around like 14 or 15 months, like he sort of started like we were really like weaning and we were dropping feeds, and then by the time that it was 18 months it was just like a night feed, and there was just like one night where he like didn't like ask to nurse, and then just like that was it. That was it.
Yeah.
He was like, I'm good, you know?
Yeah. Ugh, so
So
bittersweet.
yeah, yeah.
I've like thought about that sometimes where I'm like, wow, I'm never gonna experience that again. That's
Mhm.
kind of sad to think about.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah, so for my first, we had a really rough experience. So he still has tongue tie and I think it was upper lip tie. But I didn't know this. Uh, I can't remember if anyone pointed it out to me. I do remember, yes, in the hospital there were lactation consultants, like you said. I had a C-section, so my milk was a little bit delayed, and then I was incredibly engorged to the point where it was so incredibly painful. The lactation consultant asked me if I had implants. That's how engorged I was.
Oh man, it's
I was
awful.
like, and I'm like a very small-chested person, so I was like, that's kind of a compliment. You think I have implants? No one has ever said that to me before. But at the same time, I was in so much pain, right? Like, because just
Yeah,
no
you're like
milk,
not funny right now.
right? They were like boulders, like nothing was coming out. I was like crying. I was like, what is this? Eventually, it wasn't really till I got home. Like, I had to do a lot of pumping, which I also think probably in hindsight didn't help, but they were like, we gotta get that milk out somehow. So they were having me pump in the hospital. I was trying to latch him. And of course, now knowing what I know, I'm like, all that stimulation was like putting my body into overdrive and literally making the situation worse. But I was also doing a lot of that like lymphatic massage. Back then, they recommended, the actual like vibrating massagers and like all things that are no longer really recommended for lactating and breastfeeding. But eventually it was okay, but it was still like hard for him to latch. I think the combination of me having such extreme engorgement and then him having that lip and tongue tie, the lactation consultant had mentioned it in the hospital. But then when we went to the pediatrician, they were like, it's really not that bad. Like, I wouldn't recommend cutting it, or addressing it,
Yeah.
whatever. And me being a new mom, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna listen to the pediatrician, right? Like, I don't know any better. So we didn't do anything with it. For like the first 2 weeks, I would keep trying to latch him, but it was just really painful. I think, again, combination of factors. Like, it just was not working. He was not transferring milk the way that he should have. He was not gaining weight the way that he should have. So I didn't really even know that exclusively pumping was an option. And it was actually something I had seen on social media where someone I was following, it was an influencer, she had switched to exclusively pumping and was talking about it. And I was like, wait, that I could do that? Like, it's not just like this or formula. Like, I could pump and still give him milk because I was making so much of it, right? Like, with the engorgement and everything. And so I was like, okay, maybe I'll try that. I did wait until like 2 weeks postpartum so that I wasn't making a decision out of like this hormonal fog. I think it was really like 3 weeks postpartum where I was like, we'd been trying doing both a little bit. And I was like, I think I'm just going to go with the pumping. Like, feels less mentally draining, feels less stressful of me not knowing how much he's getting and then having to go to these weigh-ins and having them be like he's not gaining weight and then I'm getting all that mom guilt and feeling bad because what am I doing wrong? I'm a bad mom. He's not gaining weight. Like, it just like mentally felt relieving to me to be like this is something I can control where I know how much he's eating and that decision felt good for me. So I switched to exclusively pumping. I ended up getting mastitis in that transition too. It was like, I think it was right around there, 3 weeks postpartum. Got really bad mastitis. So that was not fun. I know you've dealt with that multiple times as well.
Same. I was
uh,
like, yeah, I wouldn't wish mastitis on like my worst enemy. Like it was awful. I'm
it
so
was
sorry you
like
had that happen at 3 weeks.
back in 2009, I had what we used to call the swine flu. It's H1N1, right? Like
Yeah.
horrendous. Like I felt like I was on my deathbed. This felt worse than that. I was like, what is happening to me? I felt like I was truly dying. But yeah, so I decided to switch to pumping, went through mastitis, and I ended up being an overproducer because, again, all that pumping, all that putting him to the breast, trying to get him to, yeah. Anyways, I was producing so much milk, which was really not fun. Like you always, again, see on social media, people are filling up freezers and having this whole stash and stuff. But like when you are producing milk at such a high rate, it does make you more prone to clogs and mastitis, and it's just really uncomfortable. And so I dealt with that for a really long time. And I continued to exclusively pump until he was about 10 months old. It was actually pretty mentally draining after a while. Like, at first it was kind of like a relief to be like, I can control this, right? Like, this is
Hmm.
something that I have a schedule with it. It feels a little less chaotic, especially as a new mom. But as time went on, it was like, oh, I have to follow a schedule every 2 hours, every 3 hours, I need to pump. All the cleaning that came with it. The cleaning, like, ugh, terrible. It felt like all I
Yeah.
was doing was cleaning and washing bottles and pump parts all the time. I would say that if you're listening to this and you're someone that is exclusively pumping, I definitely recommend having multiple sets of pump parts so that you're not having to wash them after every single pump session. That was something that I eventually learned. I think I had like 4 sets of pump parts so that I only had to wash them like twice per day, that really helped. Like I would wash in the afternoon and then like at night before I went to bed, because that way I always had clean parts that I could use. Um, Same with bottles. We just had tons of bottles, so we weren't having to constantly clean, and it was just like a once or twice a day kind of thing. But once he was 10 months, I did switch to formula. So I like ran through my freezer stash, which really didn't even last me that long, to be honest. And then we did switch to formula until he hit a year old. And I mean, we only formula fed for 2 months, but it did feel a lot easier. I'm not gonna lie. It's definitely more expensive for sure, but I was like, oh, this is not so bad. This is kind of nice. So I kind of got the whole range of like nursing, pumping, and trying formula with him. Kind of got to see all of them and what that was like. Um, but yeah, it was definitely a long journey. It was still very stressful. I sometimes have clients now that will tell me, like, before they have their baby, that they're planning to exclusively pump because they think it's going to be easier. And I support whatever decision people make, but I do try to be like, it's not necessarily easier. Like, I don't want you to go into it with that idea that it's easier. It's just like hard, in its own different way. I think it's all hard, honestly.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think they're all different forms of hard. And like you said, I would imagine I only had a very short stint with having to do some pumping, but like I did not like that, and I think that yeah, it's certainly like draining and you have to be scheduled like you said, and cleaning all of the parts is no annoying too. Um but they all have different hearts, and I think it is figuring out what mentally is like best for you given the circumstances that you're in. And so I don't think there's, a right or a wrong answer for
Yeah.
for these kinds of things.
Well, and I think too, it's so dependent on the baby too. Like a lot of times we put pressure on ourselves of like, you know, can I produce milk? Can I produce enough milk? Like whatever that might be. But I think it's easy to forget that it's like there's a whole nother person in this equation, which is your baby. And
Totally.
I was actually just telling a friend this who just recently had her baby, but I'm like, they also don't know what they're doing. As like a brand new baby, I definitely found that nursing a newborn versus like a 3-month old, totally different experience. Like the 3-month old, they can hold their head up now. They like know how to latch. I feel like it gets much better as they get older. We're in that early newborn phase, like they don't really know what they're doing either. They can't hold their head up. Like you're having to finagle all the props and the pillows and trying to like get it so that they are in the right position. And I feel like that makes it so hard and can be discouraging. So even just like reminding yourself or reminding your friends, that are in that journey, like it does get easier as they get older. And I think that's why people are like, try to stick with it if you can. Like the beginning is the hardest part.
It is. I'm glad that you said that and you brought up like the positioning, because that's what I was going to share about my breastfeeding journey with Gianna. And um, I also would say like had a pretty good, again, like generally good experience with her. I just exclusively nursed her. She was home with me until pretty much she stopped nursing. Um, and yeah, I think we tried to do like a bottle or something like once, just so Derek could say that he like fed her, and she was just like, "Yeah, no, this is not happening." So she didn't like bottles either. But luckily it didn't matter. I was home. Um, but I do remember that within, I think, like, yeah, definitely the first month, at some point, she had some like milk blisters, or like I think sometimes they're called like blebs on her lips, and so like the we had to like play around with like the positioning, and she was kind of like having some nursing strikes at this point, during this time, because obviously she was like uncomfortable, and so that was definitely challenging, and so I was like trying all these different positions to try to like figure out what was gonna like work best for us. And that was like really stress that was really stressful. Because I'm like, okay, gotta figure this out and like get you relief. And also like I'm
Right.
uncomfortable too.
Well, and it is hard when they're
Like,
so small and they can't like help themselves. And then, like you're in charge of trying to position them the right way and like
yeah.
it's just, and then they're like wiggling and then they move and you're like, oh, okay, now we got to start all over again.
Yeah, yeah. And so that was hard. I also did experience this with her, and when you brought it up earlier with Luca, just a lot of like clogs.
Hmm.
Like I just think I'm like naturally prone to having clogs, and even now that what are we? She stopped nursing like two at 18 months. So it's been like about a year now since she's stopped nursing, and like even cyclically sometimes I will still get like some like clogs, and it's just like, oh my God. But yeah, the biggest thing that helped me with clogs was sunflower lecithin.
Love
Just
that
like
stuff. Mhm.
I think you told me about
Yeah.
it. And just like I would take, one or two just like daily as prevention. And then I think it's like three, or you can take up to three or four if you
Hmm.
have a clog. But I did feel like that really helped. And then just doing like that lymphatic massage, like in the shower and everything. And I had a much better experience with that when they did finally update, or ACOG updated their like mastitis and clog
Yeah.
recommendations, because I had tried like the much like rougher approaches with like Luca, and that was far more miserable than the new updated recommendations. And we can link those in the show notes.
Yeah.
But oh
Yeah,
my
because they used
gosh.
to have you like really dig at it and try to massage it
Yeah,
out.
with like a brush. I remember like I'd use like a comb or
Yeah.
something, and there'd be like red marks on my breath. This is
Which like
not the way. Like, what am I doing?
right. And even when you think about like when you have an injury, like the thing that you are not doing is like aggressively like pushing and trying to massage. And so yeah, like why would you do that?
Yeah,
Crazy.
but
I am glad they updated it.
anyways. So yeah, anyways, we'll definitely share the new current ACOG recommendations and not look back on the aggressive massaging for sure.
Yeah, because the new ones definitely they feel better. I definitely felt like it worked better too.
Yes.
I with my daughter, I still got mastitis, but I got mastitis, I think I was 6 weeks postpartum. Yes, I was. I was 6 weeks postpartum. And I know why I got it. It was double mastitis too, which was terrible. But it was because I had gone out to brunch with my friend and my sister. It was like my first little time away from the kids as a mom of two. I was like, look at me. I'm going on an outing. And I was like, I should really bring my LVs, my portable pumps to pump. And I'm like, oh, it'll be all right. I'll get home. I'll feed her. It'll be fine. Nope. It was too much time away. And like literally that night, I felt the clogs starting. And I was like, oh man, here we go. Really can't
Yeah.
skip feedings that early on because it definitely leads to the clogs and the mastitis. Um, but yeah, like with my daughter, I really wanted to try to nurse since I didn't have that experience with my first. So I was like, now I'm a little more seasoned mom. I'm less overwhelmed by just like having a newborn in general. So I have the mental capacity to try to put more effort into this breastfeeding journey. I did have the lactation consultants in the hospital, but sometimes I felt like they were a little abrasive. I don't know if you had that experience with the like in-house lactation consultants, but they were definitely um, kind of pushy. And I know that other people in my
Mhm.
area have said that too. So it could just be like this area. So I ended up hiring, a different lactation consultant once I was home and settled and stuff. She came to the house, which was great. So I didn't have to go anywhere. She brought like her scale and like all her stuff and was so kind, so helpful. I feel like that definitely made a huge difference with making sure I was latching correctly and stuff too. What was interesting is my daughter did not have any ties. So no tongue ties, no lip ties. Definitely noticed that she seemed to be able to latch better. And I still had the same problem where I was like overproducing. I had a really strong letdown to the point where it was like spraying everywhere. So, like, she had a little bit of a hard time when she was very little latching because it would literally like choke her. So, as she got older, it was a little bit better. But I really stuck with it. And I did have to use like a nipple shield for a little bit to also help her with the latch, but that wasn't so bad. I was like, all right, that's better than me not being able to do this at all. And I was able to breastfeed with her until she was 20 months old, which I never thought that I would really breastfeed beyond a year. Like, really, my goal initially was like, let's get to 6 months, let's get to a year. To make it all the way to almost 2 years felt like such a huge accomplishment for me. And I was definitely really proud of that and her and us. And it definitely felt redemptive after a much harder experience with my first. So that was definitely cool. And like kind of like what you said with weaning Luca, like it was a slow ish process. And she was a little bit older too. So same thing as like she just kind of stopped asking and just one day we didn't do it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just really happy that I did get to have that experience and it was kind of like redemptive in a way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I had my experience with mastitis was with my daughter, and it was actually like more during the weaning process side of things. And it was kind of one of those situations where I think we had dropped the like morning feed. And so like I was going to that, like just like we were just doing the night feed before bed kind of thing. So I went from like doing it, at night and then in the morning to like that sort of full, like almost 24-hour period. And yeah, I don't remember if I tried to do like a little pump to like relieve or like I missed it or something. And just like I could feel myself like getting the fever. And it was like, nope, this is like, I'm getting this. And it
Yeah,
was
the weaning,
awful to go get antibiotics.
yeah, I'd have antibiotics too each time I had it. But yeah, the weaning is hard because you are going, like you said, like almost 24 hours in between. And that can be tough when you're really prone to clogs.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm getting clogs. And yeah. So, anyways, after that, it was this pretty, I think that was a pretty short time period to when she stopped, when I had that happen, to when she stopped nursing. It was like maybe like a month or two before. And I was like, almost made it out.
So
Almost made it
close.
out. So close. So, but yeah, it was like both times they both kids it did the same thing. She just like stopped nursing, and I wasn't expecting it from like when she did at all. And it is such a like, like proud moment, but also bittersweet. Like I think you said earlier, of just being like, oh, like I'm done with this like experience now, like that chapter's
Right.
kind of closed. And I did end up getting like a breastfeeding like ring with like their birthstones on it, and it has like Gianna's milk in it. And actually, she's local to you. She's in like the Raleigh area. But that was really cool. But I still have some frozen breast milk in my freezer, and I don't know what to do with it.
Oh, I do too. Oh, I saved one bag for my son because I wanted to do something like that with him, like the frozen jewelry or the the breast milk
Yeah.
jewelry. And then I have several from my daughter because she just, when I would pump, like if it was fresh in the fridge, she would drink it. But if I ever like froze something and then tried to thaw it, like when I was in a pinch and needed milk, she was like, I'm not drinking that. Like she was
Yeah.
very particular about what kind of pumped milk she would drink. So I have a lot of bags, but I'm like, it just feels wrong to dump them down the drain. I can't bring myself to do it. It's so much hard work.
I know. Same. I'm like, you can't just. Derek's like, what are you going to do with this? I'm like, I don't know. It's staying there for now.
Staying there forever till I move.
I know. I don't have it from Luke anymore because we had moved. We had moved too. But I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't know. Who has any other ideas how to use it
Tell
thoughtfully?
us.
Tell us.
Because it's too old to donate at this point.
Yeah.
Definitely. Let's also drop the link in the show notes for the breast milk jewelry that
Well,
you
yeah.
used.
Well, she was wonderful. It's very like simple, like beautiful looking pieces, and I felt like it was pretty like relatively timely, and so yeah, I will find the link and put it down. We'll put it in the show
Okay.
notes. So,
Perfect.
but yeah, I feel like that kind of hopefully wraps up this episode nicely, and gives a wide variety of like experiences and ups and downs and things that maybe you might expect. And yeah, I think definitely like utilize lactation consultants, like their breadth and wealth of knowledge so that you can feel, supported in your experience. So no like question I think is too silly. They're wonderful. And we will see you guys back next week. Have a good one.